The Right Honourable Jean Chrétien. Monsieur Chrétien, thank you so much for coming in today. It is indeed a pleasure and an honour to have you in our studios.
You're very kind. I'm happy to be with you.
Mr. Chrétien, we have your book here, My Stories, My Times. Usually, when former prime ministers or persons of importance write a book, it tends to be rather dry and pedantic. This was certainly not the case with yours. It's a book of anecdotes. Why this form?
Because, what happened is that when I'm having a good dinner and I sit down, people will ask me all sort of questions about my career and people I met and political situation and so on. And sometimes I become talkative and I have a lot to talk about. And one day my grandson said, "Grandpapa, this will be lost. You have all sort of anecdotes that some are serious, some are funny, and they will be lost. Why don't you write them down for us?" So I started one night and another night, and it was difficult at the beginning. You can see that the first stories are shorter because it was a bit more painful. And I developed a taste for it, and I wrote 50 stories. They are not anecdote. They are, I call chronicles, at the beginning it was 600-700 words. At the end it was 3,600 words. And, enjoy doing that. I spent a full year doing that. As I said, when I was fed up of listening on TV, the nonsense of Donald Trump, I would go to my table and gain back my serenity in writing this book.
As a former leader, you mentioned Donald Trump, and you have come out publicly with some criticism of the U.S. president. How hard is it for you to not continually, as a former prime minister and a longtime politician, not to comment on current affairs?
Oh, it's very easy. It's very rare. Now it's because I'm involved in the promotion of my book and my publishers want me to get out and all you guys, you want to interview me. So I have to talk. And now I'm dragged into making comments. And you know me, when you ask me a question, you tend to have an answer.
When you recount some of these tales in here, obviously you have had a long, very long career in politics, and there have been some highs and some lows. One of the most difficult, I guess, challenging and serious for the entire country was the referendum. Talk to me a bit about that.
But I was involved in two referendums. The first one, I was the one designed by Mr. Trudeau to lead in Quebec the federal Liberal Party group involved in the referendum, and I was involved in the second one as Prime Minister. It was very difficult in a way because the questions were so confusing. Are you in favor of motherhood and against sin? My God, it was difficult. Do you want to have a better deal? Everybody wants to have a better deal. And it was difficult. They were using words. They were giving me hell because I was calling them separatists. And they said, "Oh, no, we're not separatists. We are independentists." And they invented another word. We are sovereignists, just to hide the truth. And the first question, I remember, was more than 100 words. You didn't know exactly what it meant. The second one, let's make a deal, and if the deal is not working, we might consider separation. And you remember the phrase of Parizeau. He said when they voted yes, they would be like a lobster caught in a cage. We would say that means separation. But you read the question, sometimes I reread it. I could have voted yes, and that didn't mean necessarily separation. They wanted to have a new deal. Everybody wants to have a new deal. I'm sure your wife would like to have a better deal. And so, there's nothing new about having a better deal. The question is the consequence of separation yes or no? And they refused to say that. And in the book, I wrote that Pierre Bourgault, who was a real separatist, told me one day, he said, "When you, Chrétien, you call me separatist, I'm not offended because I'm a separatist." And I replied to Bourgault, "When you call me a bloody federalist, I don't mind. I am a bloody federalist. It's what I am." So there was no equivocation on my position and his. The rest was, sovereignty association. We'll keep the money, we'll keep the passport, we'll keep this, and not pay the debt. Come on, it was not really reasonable. So I had to fight it.
You bring up some interesting points. In this most serious situation, there was a lot of comment about how this would work coming from the other side, like keeping the money, for example. As Prime Minister, you must have said, but this is
But that was nonsense.
Nonsense. But yet there wasn't.
Yeah, but they were selling that, and we're in a free society where they have the freedom of speech. So they would say that, not telling the people what will be the consequences of all of that. And telling the people, if we become an independent country, it will be happiness, we'll not pay federal taxes anymore. Yes, but you will have to give the service of the federal government, and you will have to pay for them. There was all sort of things that were not kosher, if you can use that word, and we had to fight it. And it was not easy, but we won.
Well, you came out with the Clarity Act.
Later on, I said, next time, the question has to be clear. Do you want to separate, yes or no? Because it is what it's all about. They were using words trying to hide the true meaning of their activities. And, why they were afraid of the truth. It's not a capital sin to be a separatist. Some countries have separated. Norway and Sweden and Finland and I think Copenhagen and Denmark were together at one time. Eventually, they became 4 different countries. It could happen, but the people have to know what will be the consequences. And something they didn't want to debate.
Well, what would happen, for example, to the maritime provinces if Quebec had, in fact? I mean, we'd have a split country.
No, perhaps Canada wouldn't have disappeared. If the maritime had decided to join America. When Newfoundland joined Canada some 60 years ago, they had a referendum. They had to decide if they wanted to be completely independent because the Brits were letting them go, or to become Americans or becoming Canadians, and Joey Smallwood picked up Canada. But he could have become American. So they could have decided to go back with America. And the same thing in the Maritimes. The West could have decided to be part of the United States. They would have had a big surprise because the resources in the United States of oil are controlled by Washington, not by the states. So the Albertans who complain about the federal government in Canada, they would have had a lot more complaints if they had been Americans. So it's all a hypothetical debate, and Canada has remained united, and nobody is, now the cause of separation has gone down very much. The PQ arrived in the last election here in Quebec, and, so for me, I feel pretty good about that because I'm a Canadian from sea to sea to sea.
Now, that, of course, is one of the very tough, very, very tough issues that you had to face in your time as Prime Minister. But again, you've had, in the book here, there's a lot of good notes, high notes as well. Tell me a couple of high notes that you had.
Oh, but to win election is the high note. I was elected 12 times as a member of parliament, and I was 3 times with majority government. And I was more than 10 years prime minister, and I was in the cabinet or leader of the opposition another 30 years. But the most important is to have been elected member of parliament in 1963. If I had not won that, I would not be what I am today.
What attracted you to politics in the first place?
Well, my dad wanted me to be a politician.
And at that time, you had no choice.
Of course, I wanted to be an architect. He said, you will never be elected as an architect. He wanted me to be a politician. He trained me to be a politician, and he got a politician. And, he said, you go to the law school. And in those days, when Dad told you, you do that, there was no debate. We did it.
And much later on in life, he gave you what would be considered a very small compliment now.
He said, after all, you were not that bad. But I was a father of these days. They were not. Dad, it was not, he would ask me why this and why that. He was bragging about me when I was not there. I knew that. But when I was there, you could do better. I always had to do better. And I did reasonably well. And he was apparently quite happy. He told that to me at the end, a few days before he died.
Now, the life of a prime minister, what we see in the public is certainly much different than what actually goes on. What goes on behind the scenes for a life of a prime minister that we don't see? How busy is it, for example?
It's very busy because, and it's, people are always dumping on politicians, but it is a very hard job to do. You have your constituents, you have the problem of your constituent, you have to go to your office and deal with all these problems, trying to get answer from bureaucrats and so on, the House of Commons, the committees, and go back on weekends in your writing and go, to the meeting of the Night of Columbus or the Scout and all the jazz. You have to be present. There is a celebration. You have to be there. There's a hockey tournament. You have to be there. There's a wedding. You have to be there. It's a love. Or a funeral is the same thing. It's extremely busy. But nobody is obliged. Don't feel too sorry for them either. Because if you don't like it, it's easy. You have a piece of paper and you say, just sign, I resign. It's 2 words, Chrétien, that's over. So, everybody does it because they like it. But I think that the people are very unjust on the role of politicians these days because we are the easy target of everybody. You, the press, you're having fun, making comment on politicians, Why? Because you elected them, the Prime Minister is paid probably 1/4 of the worst hockey player in the NHL, and we're complaining about the salary of the Prime Minister or a Member of Parliament who must be paid about 1/10 of what the worst hockey player is making. But they're not there for money. There's no money to be made there. But it's a very exciting life.
What's it like to resign then after?
It's easy. You just sign your name.
No, but you had this life. You're busy. You're going here or there, international trips.
No, I had enough of it.
Oh, yeah?
I had enough of it. I had no problem quitting. None at all. I don't miss it. I observe it and I smile, but I don't miss it. I make a joke. The only thing I miss is question period. I love question period. Some don't like it, but for me, I enjoy House of Commons. It's a great institution. And, you go there, and in England, the Prime Minister receives a notice of the Prime Minister is in England, in Buckingham, the House of Commons there. He is there only once a week for half an hour. And he received notice of the question 48 hours before the question period. Here in Canada, I went there for 10 years, 3 or 4 times a week, never receive a notice of the question. And you have to answer. It's a nice challenge. But for me, I enjoy it because, I had one advantage. I had been cabinet minister for almost 20 years before I became prime minister. So I knew probably more about the question than the person asking me the question. So it was perhaps a bit easier.
One of the dossiers that you really enjoyed was that of Northern Affairs and Indian Affairs.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about why you enjoyed that and why that was
because
interesting.
It was a government within a government. I had all the Indians of Canada, all the reserve land and all so on. I had all the Northwest Territories, the Yukon and Nunavut that I created. So you were involved in education, you were involved in housing, you were involved in health, you were involved in resources development, you were involved about training, university. It is a government within a government. And it's a very difficult job. But I last 6 years, 1 month, 3 days, and 4 hours, and enjoyed them all,
One of the things you're also very proud of is creating national parks.
Yeah. But I created parks, I have a cute story with Frame, who was a president of Parks, the Association of the Parks for Canada. He was somebody from Toronto, and he came to me and to tell me, to discuss that. So he explained to me that the need for more and a lot of good lands that had to be preserved and so on. And I told him, I said, fine. I said, if I'm there for 5 years, I will have 10 new national parks. He said, you cannot do that. He said, there was only 4 in 40 years before that day. I said, no. I said, I'm there, I will. So he said, I will bet you $5 that I will do it. And he took up the bet. And when I finished my 10 national park, he wrote me a beautiful letter telling me he never paid with such done right pleasure a losing bet. And I never cashed the check.
In fact,
So it cost him nothing.
I think you had it laminated, didn't you?
Yes, but the minister responsible for park, the minister of the environment the other day was asking me about it. I said, it's somewhere in the department. She would like to trace it back.
So what is Jean Chrétien doing now other than...
I am a lawyer. I'm a senior advisor in a big law firm called Denton's. It is the biggest law firm in the world. 10,000 lawyers or more in 40 different or 50 different countries. And I am working from one of their office from Ottawa, but now my family would like me to come back to Montreal, where I still have a home in Shawinigan where I spend on the Lac des Piles about 3 months a year. So I'm moving back to Montreal, but I will split my time between Montreal and my lake and my cottage, where my wife and I were among our, Shawinigan and St. Maurice is my roots, and we are happy there. So we will be able to go there more often than from Ottawa. But I had a very good time. I love the city of Ottawa. I was there for 50 years, and I think it's a beautiful city and very pleasant city to live in.
Will there be another book from you? Because obviously with
so
it's
many... it's only a part of souvenirs. Because what I did is I would sit on my table and say, what the hell I'm writing about this week? So suddenly I will start to, so I start slowly and write a story. But now people come to me and they say, this is not there, and so on. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if I would have the hell to do it. I love to do it. When I would sit at my table, after 20 minutes, I would fall into a kind of a bubble and slowly write that. I thought it was all handwritten. Mm-hmm. And the archive said it's probably the last time that a prime minister write a book with his pen and piece of paper. Mm-hmm. So they said they want it back in the archive quickly. They said, we don't want to lose it. So
there might be a My Stories, My Times 2.
Oh, I don't know. I have no plan for that at all. But who knows? I never say, Fontaine, je ne boirai jamais de ton eau. Fontaine, I will never drink of your water. You never know. Mm-hmm.
It is indeed a most interesting and entertaining book, and I thank you very much for writing it.
I'm happy that you enjoy it, and it's why I wrote it. I think that I wanted the people to have a feeling of what it is, but it is, incident or personalities that I met, and I share some of my experience as much as the international level, that a local level and family level. But it's all stories. It's not a biography. It's just my stories.
And very interesting they are, and very easy to read as well.
Good. I'm happy because I want the people to have fun with it. They don't, for me, I had fun doing it, and I'm happy they had fun read it. I didn't want to I didn't want to impress you with all my knowledge. I just wanted to give you a good story to read.
And that it is. Mr. Jean Chrétien, thank you so much for coming in.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.